go over, I guess, the community-based disaster risk reduction planning, as that's very important with any kind of disaster. It does save lives, it lessens the suffering, and it reduces the damage if you're prepared ahead of time. Whether it's tornadoes, earthquakes, it really doesn't matter. All of us need to identify the hazards that surround us every day. It's part of life. It's not going to change. So we all have to be prepared to deal with whatever comes our way. We can't expect everybody to do everything for us. It's just not going to work. Wherever you live, whether it's Mayflower or Greenbrier or Morrilton, that's dealing with earthquakes right now, you've got to identify what those are around you, what's going to happen to you. Tornadoes, they could be today. You don't know. And everything causes some serious problems. These are examples of some of the hazards that are around us every day. In the low-lying areas, floods, typhoons, hurricanes here, disease outbreaks. You know, the state's on TV telling you to shelter in place. Do you know what that means? Radiation with nuclear one out there. That could be an accident any day. Pipeline ruptures. Nobody knew that was going to happen. It just did. Could there be another one? Probably. There's pipelines all over the state. Earthquakes, they're going on every day. Tornadoes, like I said, could be today yet. And certain communities are more vulnerable to disaster-related injuries, illness, and death. Depends where they're at. Examples of that vulnerability are elderly. They can't just pack up, get in their car in 10 seconds like a 20-year-old kid. It takes them a while. Maybe they live in a flood zone and don't even know how to swim. Do they have a life jacket in their house if they can't swim? I have a daughter-in-law can't swim, lives in a low-lying area. She has a life jacket now. Our resilience, the ability to cope with and recover from disasters. We need to know how to do that. And our human behaviors to increase our disaster resilience, preparedness, response, and recovery. I'll stop real quick. That's what started the Faulkner County Citizens Advisory Group back in 2009 when the earthquake started up in Greenbrier Guy. Myself and Emily Harris were talking. We've been friends for quite a few years and quickly figured out that none of the neighbors, the fire department, OEM, the state, within phone calls that I made and visits, there really wasn't even an earthquake plan for the state. The only one they had was the Civil Air Patrol was going to fly grid patterns and report damages. In the last 3 years, going with appropriate people and meeting them, and April meeting with the school district in Greenbrier, everybody's getting on board with having a plan. If you don't have a plan, you're in trouble right away. There's got to be a plan for everything. Good disaster reduction plans are simple to use. It can't be complicated. It has to be written by a group, hopefully a group that people are familiar with. You know, nobody reads something if the CDC or FEMA sends you something in the mail. It's probably gone in your trash can. You don't know those people. You don't know who wrote it. Most people won't even take the time to read that, and it's good information. The Red Cross is an outstanding supplier of disaster preparedness, what you should have in a kit for anything. And ideas from people that are actually going to do the work from OEM and Adam here in the state. And it's got to be based on goals that are set by that leadership with regular training, and then you assess everything. Hopefully that's what comes out of this disaster in Mayflower. Is they go through an assessment and see what they did wrong, what they can do better. Right now, the disaster recovery plan goes something like this. Help me! Pretty much that's true with anything. And it can't be that way. You know, well, my military experience in the past, I've seen it in other countries take effect. They don't have plans. We do more in this country than in most other countries in the world for disaster preparedness. And that's a good thing. That's why you see hundreds of thousands of people dying in foreign countries when something bad happens. They're not prepared. They don't have the resources. So our resources are real important to us. We've got to make sure that our legislators don't cut budgets for emergency management people and environmental quality people. It's critical. Our environment is critical to our existence, and our environment can be our biggest threat.
Okay, so this is going to be a really short, simple presentation, and just kind of go over some of the things we talked about at the last town hall and what some of the results. First of all, I'm Emily Lane. I'm one of the board members for FCCAG. I've been involved since about 2010, late 2010. Our goal for the last event was similar to what the goal for this event is, really just to facilitate between the public and the officials. And we also wanted to create a list of prioritized actions that we should recommend to some of our local officials, and that maybe we could also take on ourselves. There were over 100 people in attendance that day, including affected residents and concerned neighbors, including people in Faulkner County, and even we had people come down from Oklahoma, and there were some people there from Florida. So it was pretty a good crowd. We had environmental and health experts that we flew in from out of state. It was really good to have them there. And there was a lot of local and state officials and several media outlets that covered the event. There were presentations on various topics, including the evaluation of available data, which came straight from the ADEQ's website. We had an environmental scientist go over some of the available data and break that down for us. And actually, there's a handout in front of you that outlines that. Also, there were the associated health concerns were discussed pretty in-depth at the first town hall meeting. Glenn Cook from Sierra Club, who's going to be here later today, talked about community mobilization. We also had a good talk about rights after an oil spill, which we're going to talk more about today. And then we talked a lot about the XML UVP disaster and how it compares to Mayflower. We also released the results of independent air and water testing, which we are going to be releasing some more independent data today. And then we made a list of recommended actions, which I'll go through now. There were 12 recommended actions that folks in the audience recommended, and then they were voted on. So this is, they're prioritized. So the one on top here is the one that got the most support from the crowd. And these recommendations were delivered to the City Planning Committee in Mayflower, the City Council, the County Judge, the senators in this district, Congress President, and several other officials. So the first recommended action was for Arkansas to buy hot flex, or the best available technology to clean up the oil that still remains in the water, and also to do complete comprehensive water quality testing. And thanks to Scott Smith, who's continuing to do that. You're going to hear from him later today. Also, the second most popular recommended action was a comprehensive community health assessment. This has got to be done, and we're hoping the health department step up and do it. We also recommended to form a qualified settlement trust, which David Lincoln from Sierra Club will be talking about later today too. Also, we want to request the pipeline integrity reports from 2011 that was performed by Exxon. Also, there was one performed in 2013 in February, just a month before the spill, that we would like to see the results of those reports before the pipeline is allowed to be turned back on. Also, another big one is we need to educate the community on health risks. This is a big deal, and unfortunately, our state agencies are really not taking a proactive role in doing this. So it's up to community members, it's up to students in the local universities and the high schools. And we're hoping to get, LEPC, which is the Local Emergency Planning Committee, Office of Emergency Management, to do these kinds of things. We also talked about, in the future, having a mobile wildlife response unit. The Rock Center was a really key player right after the spill in getting some of the wildlife that was affected and treating them and releasing them back into the wild. Unfortunately, they were taken off the case about a week after the spill, and Exxon took that over. So, unfortunately, one of the things we discussed is that these incidents are going to be happening more and more in Arkansas. Pipeline ruptures and pollution events that are going to cause effects to the wildlife. So we need to establish some type of mobile wildlife unit now, prepare for those future events. The other recommended actions were to do a permanent assessment of the ecosystem. That's something that we're hoping Game and Fish, DEQ will do. We're certainly in contact with those agencies to encourage those and to support them in that. Also, we want to make it law that first responders and anyone who's working to clean up the oil spill has proper respiration. Because this stuff, as most of you know, is extremely highly toxic. And a few days after the spill, several of the members of our group were in Mayflower documenting, taking pictures right there in the middle of the cleanup. didn't even see a handful of folks that had proper respirators on. You know, we saw dozens and dozens of men and women who were being exposed to really high levels of really terrible material, and that is just absolutely appalling. It needs to be made into law, which it probably already is, but they need to enforce it. The suggestion that I made was actually to put flags or some type of physical marker in the community where the air testing is showing high levels of harmful chemicals. That way you can avoid those areas. You can actually see a physical marker. Also, get involved. You know, we talked a lot about move2amend.org, which is has to do with the corporate citizenship and corporations are people. We tend to disagree that corporations are people. So there's a website you can go to and kind of read a little bit more information about that. Another big one that is really important that we're hoping to try to get implemented is to get specialized occupational and environmental medicine doctors to come to these local clinics and train the local doctors on how to treat these patients with chemical exposure and to not be treating them with regular pharmaceuticals or antibiotics. This is really super critical, and maybe during our Q&A, April, sitting back there, can talk maybe a little bit more about that, because she's been in contact with some of those things. And then the last one actually didn't come out of this town hall, but it was something that the members of FCCAG talked about afterwards, and we really want to get some type of community action council or some type of group of Mayflower residents who are willing to take up the cause for themselves and to make their own group that is specific to Mayflower, that they can kind of take up town halls and start to have their own meetings like this. So, again, all these recommended actions were delivered to several officials, and we're certainly happy to keep doing what we're doing as FCCAG, and we plan to keep doing town halls like this. We really want to encourage, especially the people who are here from Mayflower, to really help us help you. And I think that's all. I have one more slide, I'm sorry. Of course, another result of our first town hall was it inspired this one. We're really glad to be here today and really thank all of you for being here, and I'll be around later for questions.